subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon.
This event is being organized by Campus Law Center Alumni Association. This is divided into two sessions. I'm glad that the panelists of the other session have also joined us here. I will be coordinating the first session and Mr. Siddharth Marwa will be moderating the second session. Before we come to the theme, let me briefly introduce the distinguished panelists of this session. We are honored to have with us Honorable Justice Madan Lokar, former Judge Supreme Court of India and the honorary member of Alumni Association. Honorable Justice A.K. Sikri, former Judge Supreme Court of India and the patron of Campus Law Center Alumni Association. Honorable Justice Geeta Mittal, Chief Justice, Jammu and Kashmir High Court, and the chairperson of Campus Law Center Alumni Association. Mr. Mohan Parasran, Senior Advocate and the President of CLCAA Alumni Association. Mr. Pinky Anand, Additional Solicitor General of India and Vice Chairperson of Campus Law Center Alumni Association. Mr. Siddharth Luthra, Senior Advocate and Vice President of Campus Law Center Alumni Association. Now I extend you all, including our panelists of the other session, a very warm and cordial welcome to this event. We know that this event is aimed at the final year LLB students of Campus Law Center, University of Delhi, who are anxious about the growing uncertainty which is there at the beginning of their career due to this unprecedented pandemic caused by COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 has fundamentally changed the whole world. We are already practicing social distancing, work from home, virtual learning. We are taking our lectures. University professors are taking their lectures online, virtual hearing, judges and the advocates. The essential work is being done through the virtual platform. Some of the individuals have lost their jobs in the market. Some are facing the salary cuts. Still others are nervous that at any moment they may lose their job. So can we start from Mr. Siddharth Luthra? Siddharth, let you take the lead.
Thanks. This virus has created two sets of concerns. The first, one of the major concerns is what are we going to be doing post-May? Speaking for myself, I don't see a very clear timeline when we will be able to resume work as normal. And the way some experts, medical experts, say this may go on for 6 months until a vaccine is found. And these are serious concerns which impact and even the legal profession. Will we ever return to the scenario that were busy, lawyers were running around, occupied, there was adequate employment, but today you have crowds. With the crowds that come into court, it's not going to be business as usual. One of the last hearings I did was in the Supreme Court before the physical court shut down, and we were sitting, leaving one row and about four seats apart. We were being allowed to go in, in lots of 6 cases per court, and these are big courts. But at the same time, your concern is from the time you get into your car till you go through the parking lot, till you reach the court, till you do the security scanning, can we actually return back in a post-COVID scenario? So the only thing I believe is that we are going to live in a virtual world, and that is the only way forward till we have a vaccine or till we have a final solution for this problem, medical solution. We'll have to adapt. There are technological issues, as I said offline earlier. We will have to, there are small hiccups that we are finding in terms of the filing. So lawyers have still had to go physically and file documents, original documents. Those issues have to be dealt with. The mechanisms of displaying of documents during a course of hearing as we're used to do. The mechanism of attestation, original records. We'll have to revamp our own homes to have enough bandwidth, or our own offices. We don't have the necessary bandwidth to be able to connect with the court systems. And my experience in the courts was that now, of course, it's much better. But there have been failing technology time to time. Even the courts will have to function more adequately. And I'll tell you another concern. I found in the hearings that, especially in the Supreme Court, both judges are sitting together. Now, that's not good for them. It's not good for their staff. It's not good for their administration. These are practical changes, and these changes are not going to come in one day. There have to be legal changes. There have to be regulatory changes. There have to be administrative changes. We have to have resort to technology, and technology all the way. What's going to happen to the number of cases? Well, obviously, it's going to go down. The number of cases has to reduce, and the reason for that is really going to be we can't, using technology, do the number of cases. But of course, we'll have to adapt as lawyers. We will have to stop being verbose. We'll be given definite time. Changes is, it happens in courts, unfortunately, that lawyers tend to outspeak each other. And that's a very unfortunate practice that's developed. Today, with the advantage of technology, one person speaks at a time, or the court puts you on mute till they ask you the question. Employability. We will have to consider that there is going to be lesser work. So if you're not going to need a large establishment, I'll tell you, speaking for myself, the last couple of hearings, I did completely alone. On a couple of one, I had the advantage of my young son, who's a lawyer with a law firm. He sat with me to assist me because I wasn't sure as a senior counsel whether I could sit alone. The first couple of hearings, I did not have my assisting counsel online. So I was concerned about the legality of it. But you're bound to reduce your office space, your records, you're bound to use, people are not going to be needing that kind of large offices they used to house many juniors and staff. But this is going to create a concern on jobs. So if there are limited jobs, limited source of employment, it's really going to impact the fresh graduate who comes out of law school, and they will have to find ways to make themselves relevant in the post-COVID scenario. There is clearly, the economy is in the doldrums. There's no economic activity, restrictions on FDI, protectionism. Revenue streams from manufacturing have ended. Clients will not pay bills. They can't afford to pay bills. They're first, if you speak to a client, he says, I want to pay my salaries first. Even if there's reopening, businesses and clients are going to be, businesses and industries going to run in a limited fashion. And if that happens, there is going to be lesser revenue stream, lesser litigation. Of course, there is going to be, as said earlier by President, there's going to be the COVID-generated litigation of past contracts.
Where do the students go? Where do the law students go? I'm afraid the situation is so different. I mean, we had an era when some of us started our profession, and at that time, litigation, there were few lawyers. I mean, the number of lawyers, and today you have about 13 lakh lawyers in the country. And you have almost 60,000 students for example, from the national law schools, and you would be having equal numbers from other law schools. You have almost 1,300 law schools in the country. So the generation of lawyers and the number of lawyers who are going to be coming out looking at options are going to have their hands full. Litigation is going to go down in a way that courts are not addressing for the time being all cases. They are addressing a limited, very urgent. Recently, as I mentioned, some more urgent matters have been added. For example, family law and these death penalty cases. So maybe so, but what about the other cases? Until you have litigation, you don't need lawyers. If you don't need lawyers, then young lawyers definitely would have their hands full. You're already having an engagement issue of lawyers who are existing lawyers, practicing lawyers. The new lawyers, they would not be able to demonstrate their skills in court. Over video conferencing, how will they get the confidence? How will they be able to have the ability? How will they demonstrate that they are actually capable? How do the clients consider them as capable. So all these issues of employability, of engagement, of starting a new line, I'm afraid has come to a very different kind of level. But litigation, on one hand, would decrease in the sense of how much the court will handle. But at the same time, litigation is going to increase in another way. For example, let's take the IBC, the Insolvency Bankruptcy Court. Now, there are cases already started on these aspects. And these kind of commercial cases, non-payments, force majeure, commercial breakdowns, you are going to have a situation of economic crisis, which is going to involve any crisis, as you rightly said. You just mentioned that when you introduced the subject, that any crisis automatically involves litigation and of course, consequently lawyering. So to that extent, litigation, I think, is going to increase substantially in one direction, not only intra-country, but even inter-country, because there are going to be disputes, there are going to be fallouts, so they're going to be engaged. But the question of young lawyers, I'm afraid, will have to really consider the option of learning new processes, learning, for example, things like artificial intelligence, learning the complications of those aspects. Another aspect is alternative dispute resolution. That is something which, in any case, was being conducted as an alternative to regular litigation. Even video conferencing for that is a process that could be learned. So I think we have to engage ourselves, all of us. It's not only the young students, it's only that they have a harder task to set themselves up. Law is not an easy profession in any case. You have to start from scratch and you have to build yourself up. It's a building profession. The building blocks have to be put one by one. So if you don't get the opportunity is an important component of lawyering. If you don't get the opportunity, how do you develop yourself? So that is a process that I think will evolve across the course of life. We have to make ourselves relevant. I think what the students have to understand is the relevancy of their existence as lawyers or their being as lawyers. So we take it from there, but there are some concerns just on the last part, issues of privacy, for example. Is privacy something that is not going to be non-infringed and infringed? Zoom, for example, technology. We've already talked about it. Much as we're using it, there's no problem, I think, in the current session. But generally, there's a petition in the Supreme Court today challenging the use of Zoom as a method and to ban it because of the privacy issues that it has and the kind of attacks that it can have offline and online. So we have to be dealing with various aspects. These kind of issues, again, are going to be coming up. Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, different methods. The privacy issues, for example, the media access to court hearings. Will the media have access? Initially, for example, the Supreme Court had only given access to a single link. Subsequently, of course, for senior lawyers and others, a second link has been provided. So yes, innovations are happening, modifications are happening, but I am not very sure that video conferencing as a complete principle can be adopted for all litigations and all stages of litigations. I mean, it would vary from evidence to miscellaneous hearings to final hearings. So possibly for miscellaneous hearings, it is something that could come up. And finally, I must say, even the aspect of getting a matter from hearing. Already there was a pretty hard job to get a matter listed for hearing. Today, when you have these various categorizations, I don't know how long we will continue with them, but that itself makes it a handful. Which case is going to be taken up?
Therefore, I think we will be only deciding or taking up cases through the virtual courts or through video, and post COVID, that will be in fact virtually a new era for judicial dispensation. And I think the entire phase of justice access will be completely changed and will be technologically driven. And now we are primarily concerned with urgent matters only. And we will be coming to a stage after development of the technology to decide other pending cases which are actually pending for years and which were not disposed of.
Online judging, as all of you know, has its own advantage. It saves a lot of time, it saves money, and people can access justice from every nook and corner. And human judges decide based on electronic evidence, of course, based on presentation of oral arguments, supplemented by written arguments. But it is always easier to hear cases at the admission stage for the person. But when it comes to tackling final disposal, we have to evolve a much more comprehensive mechanism for disposal of final hearing matters, because that would require strengthening of the entire infrastructure. And once if that infrastructure is strengthened, we can classify cases which can be disposed of through the virtual courts, and cases which ought to be heard by physical courts. I personally feel petty criminal matters, matters which were already covered by some judgments, or matters involving small tax effects, petty civil disputes, all those things can be classified and can be disposed of by the virtual courts. And only serious issues of policy, that is matters involving constitutional questions, criminal cases, important commercial matters, they can be taken by the courts in a live hearing, actually held physically by the courts. In my opinion, when things return back to normal, there should not be any fall in the percentage of litigation, particularly considering the fact of the pendency of old litigation and the phenomenon of new types of litigation arising in the future.
You're feeling uncertain. You know, when I joined law, way back in 1978, I had no lawyers in the profession, no connection with the legal fraternity or the judicial fraternity, and with only an idea that I will sit for the civil services. I decided to practice law in 1978 when I was getting ready to take the final law exams, and completely diverted from my aim in joining law, which was to join the civil services, to a practice of law. For years, I traveled in DTC buses, lugging files of my seniors, and the only thing which helped and worked and sustained me was the ability to work hard and honestly at that. So don't worry about the choice you make. Look at the choice which I made in 1978 with no thought of ever being even practicing at any level, reaching a point of being invited to the bench, and today being a Chief Justice of such an important High Court in the country. So none of you should feel disheartened in any manner whatsoever. The past few years have seen a completely different and new face of the legal profession. The style of practice has changed, the amount of fees has changed, the commercial litigation, has really seen a spurt. The fees which young lawyers also are demanding has changed. But actually, what the virus has brought to us is, it has brought a pause not in a working or a growth, but a pause compelling us to look at ourselves, look within us, and take this time to have a positive growth. while the lockdown has compelled us to stay home, judges to stay at home, but when I came in 2018 to Jammu and Kashmir, I had brought suitcases full of books which I wanted to read. The preoccupations were so many and the mind was so occupied that I never got a chance to read. Now, in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I have read 4 of the books, each of which I had begun reading in Delhi. I had read 118 pages, 137 pages of MJ Akbar's Kashmir because I was coming to Kashmir. I couldn't read the 138th page till today. I have finished it. I was able to read Becoming of the Life of Michelle Obama. She was also a law student and a lawyer who did litigation of very different kind. And I recommend that each one of you read it. I've been able to read Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman chief justice, woman judge of the Supreme Court of USA, her book Majesty on Law. And I'm reading a book on Article 19, Republic of Rhetoric. So therefore, this is not to be looked as a bad time or something which is come in the way of your careers. Undoubtedly, many of you must have programmed your further studies. You must be applying for LLMs. You may have applied for positions in law firms. That may have got slowed down. But no way should you take this as a negative time. It has been a time when you spent sitting down with your family members. I hope you're staying away from TV, watching news or Netflix or YouTube, and are doing positive things. Use this time for your personal growth. There is no speed in development, your own development as a lawyer. Becoming a good lawyer or reaching some level of success takes years. 10 to 12 years is the normal gestation period. So why are you in a hurry and why are you feeling despondent? Here is a time for you to read, check up, talk to Usha ji on the phone, talk to your peers, colleagues, talk to other judges. This is a wonderful idea, this kind of a discussion that we are having today. And I hope you will repeat it. There are many who will have questions which we are not able to answer. But please don't take it as a negative time. I am not personally. I'm sitting at home. I have to worry about the litigation of the entire state. We have huge areas and we are at a standstill. Now, what I now want to point out as to what are some of the difficulties and some of the things that each one of you should address. After I have completed what I wanted to say on feeling despondent, not at all. Use this, think of it positively, and let what habits you develop during this period become a part of your life. Doing yoga, doing exercises, doing workout, doing some prayers, reading a good book. Justice Lahoti always said, he tells judges that at the end of the day, you must end the day by reading even 2 stanzas of a good book. There's no reason why you shouldn't get back into that. And you children are so good with technology, you must be having ebooks by the dozens. People like me need a hard copy and a pencil with which to underline. So take this whole time with which life has given you, God has given you, in a positive spirit. Now I want to point out something.
One day. Today we are full, and maybe it may take 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months. So it is the way where nature's own way of, as it is said, punishing the mankind or whatever. But then this is an eye-opener. Today we talk of the development, and it should be sustainable development. That principle is there. But this principle of sustainable development, when the cases come to the court tomorrow, would be seen in a totally different manner and a different perception by the judges. That look, we should not, this climate change which has been happening because of these industrial activities, etc. Now, it should not lead to, it led to coronavirus, it may not lead to some other kind of virus tomorrow. So therefore, there would be more sensitivity in dealing with these cases. And there are other kinds of cases which many have said are going to increase. There would be in second stage particularly, spurt of those cases which are not filed today, whether it is domestic violence pointed out by Justice Geeta Mittal, or as pointed out by Ms. Pinky Anand also, the cases about the enforcement of contracts, IBC cases, etc. Because these are these issues are bound to be there. After all, the economics will go on and the economic activity will go on. And therefore, the cases changes would be there. The number of cases would change. My view is when we reach the normal situation, as far as litigation is concerned, it is going to increase, not going to reduce. The way it is to be dealt with, those ways may change. So therefore, as far as students are concerned, I don't think that they should have any fear. What they should do today, Justice Geeta Mittal has already told to them at length. I also wanted to say some of those aspects, but I need not repeat that. What I would say, and I had actually written one article which published in last Sunday's newspaper, where I quoted Justice Lokur also at the end, that the word of caution or the caveat in these judicial reforms is that we judges, because this is what Justice Lokur had said, that mindset of the judges has to change. They should adopt the technology and they should be ready to use these methods. I know in Delhi High Court took the lead at that time when maybe in 2008 or 9, Justice Lokur would bear out when the first e-court, paperless court was established. Today we have 10 to 12 paperless courts in Delhi. There are few in some other courts, but Delhi has taken the lead. But now in video conferencing, there may be in the beginning 1 or 2 courts designated as video conferencing courts. It is, look, this technology, how it is going to help. It is going to save so much of cost. If suppose witnesses have to travel from outside and they are not made to travel. Sometimes a particular advocate may be in difficulty, he is not able to physically come to the court. Suppose he has fractured his leg and he is not able to move around, but he can argue the case. He is otherwise physically competent to argue, and if he is heard on video conferencing, it will avoid unnecessary adjournments in that sense. It is going to bring much more transparency in many forms. One is that, yes, you have seen Kerala High Court and Bombay High Court have allowed live streaming. So people are able to see, if I am a litigant and not able to come to court, I know what is happening in my case, I am able to watch them. And likewise others also. So therefore it is going to bring much more transparency as well. So there are going to be many, many benefits of this technology. Let us adopt it, and let us, I would say, if we are not skilled, we should learn new skills, and or if we need to upskill the skill, whatever limited skill we have, we should utilize this opportunity during this period. There may be changes which we may see as far as the legal landscape is concerned, but those changes, according to me, are going to be for the betterment of the lawyer society, and take advantage of that. That is what I would say. Thank you very much.
You know, the students, the law students in the third year or even second year and first year, I think all of us should realize that the Supreme Court of India is not the only court in the country. You know, we have high courts, we have district courts. How come we don't talk about them? You know, really, it is the high courts that are far more powerful in a sense than the Supreme Court. And when we talk about justice, we talk about justice in the district courts. That's where, you know, the problem is. We need to improve the systems in the district courts. We need to give far greater importance to the high courts than we've been doing at the moment. So let us not concentrate on, you know, what are the problems in the Supreme Court, you know, whether video is working properly or not working properly, whether listing of cases is proper or not proper, whether people are able to, you know, afford the fees of lawyers or not. I think that's well. Certainly it's an area that should be discussed. But I think the crux of the problem when we talk about the future is with the high courts and with the district courts. And I would encourage the third year students and also the first and second year students and young lawyers, if they're listening in, to, you know, concentrate much more on the district courts and on the high courts, because that is where the changes are more required than anywhere else. The third thing is that technology can definitely be used. Even in the recent past, I know of a trial that was conducted over a period of 3 days in a court of protection in England. I know of a trial that was conducted in Denmark. I know of some of the superior courts in Europe that have conducted proceedings. So really, technology is a supplement to justice delivery. It is not a substitute. Court hearings, oral hearings, in-person hearings, whether it's through lawyers or litigants, will continue. Video conferencing, technology, and so on will certainly be a supplement. And as Justice Sikri said, technology can be used for court management. It can be used for case management. This is an area that we've not looked at. This is an area which process reengineering could have looked at and should look at. Well, there are recommendations that have been made by the Law Commission, and I think these are things for the future that we must think about. The next thing that I would like to say is that I really don't know why third-year students should feel disheartened. I don't know. We are on the basis that some of them are disheartened. I frankly don't think there is any need to be disheartened. I'm pretty optimistic about the future of justice delivery and of young lawyers making it in the profession. There are several avenues that are open to young lawyers. Litigation is, of course, one of them, but that's not the only one. Over the last maybe a year or year and a half, I've been associated with some NGOs, which are doing a lot of legal work, huge amount of research. And if you go to any of these websites like Bar and Bench or Live Law, once in a while you'll see reports given by some of these like Daksh or Vidhi. I mean, there's so many of them. So that is an opportunity that is available to young lawyers. That is one. Number two, academics. There are a lot of young lawyers who have graduated from different universities across the country who are studying abroad and are doing research and writing wonderful articles. Right? And academics is something which, young lawyers are now taking up seriously. I mean, I know of national law universities where alumni are going there and teaching, maybe for one semester, maybe for a particular, couple of sessions or whatever it is. So academics really is something which must necessarily be looked at by young lawyers as one of the options that is available. Third option, joining the judiciary. Right now, I don't know how this All India Judicial Service is going to work because the paper or the concept paper is not yet available. But whatever it is, whether the All India Judicial Service comes into play or does not come into play, why can't young lawyers, sit for the examinations and become judges at the district level? That is an option that is available. The salary is very good. It's only the top-notch students of, national law universities who will get a, salary of 1 lakh rupees per month or whatever, 80,000 rupees per month. I don't know what salary they get. But a young civil judge will get a salary of 80,000 rupees a month. So in terms of money, joining the judiciary is a very good opportunity.
Like in the first session, we heard the point of view of our alumni from the perspective of the bar and bench. Now we jump on quickly to the second session where we have our alumni from the field of academia, corporate commercial law, and NGOs who will give their perspective on today's topic. As you know, this session is being conducted primarily for our students and the young alumni who have the fears and apprehensions about what new challenges the legal profession hold for them post-COVID. So now, without wasting further time, I'll just like take the opportunity and the honor to introduce our panelists for the second session. Firstly, we have Professor C. Rajkumar with us, who's the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University and is also the Dean of Jindal Global Law School. We have with us Mr. Ajay Bhargav, who's a partner at Khaitan & Co. He's a senior member of the dispute resolution team over there and specializes in civil, criminal, and corporate litigation. We have amongst us Mr. Hardeep Sachdeva, who's a senior partner at AZB and Partners. He's one of the leading corporate and M&A lawyers in the country and specializes across various sectors. We have amongst us Mr. Joginder Yadav, who's the General Counsel for Cisco in India, which is one of the leading multinational corporations in the IT sector. We also have amongst us Ms. Anu Monga, who's a partner at Indus Law. Anu ma'am, her focus areas include antitrust, competition, along with technology, media, and telecommunication laws. We have with us also Mr. Ravi.
There is one more introduction of Anu, and that is that she is also a member of the governing body of Campus Law Center Alumni.
Campus Law Center. True. Yes. We also have with us Mr. Ravi Kant, who's the president of Shakti Vahini, which is a legal NGO which takes part in a lot of variety of social causes, primarily focusing on child trafficking and child abuse. And lastly, we have in the panelists with us Professor Dr. Usha Tandon, who's a senior professor and the guiding light of our Campus Law Center Alumni Association, who helps us organize all these events time and again. Without wasting further time, I think we'll just start with the discussion for the panelists from the second session. I would firstly like to invite Professor C. Rajkumar to speak on the topic, as we've heard that a lot of students who are also wanting to get into research, they have their apprehensions in their mind and who want to get into academics as well, and what the world holds for them post-COVID. A lot of them had applied for foreign universities. They don't know if they'll be able to go. So what are the various avenues which they should be looking at? Over to you.
For those of you who are thinking about going abroad, I would strongly encourage you not to do so, at least for the next few years. Just a few weeks ago, me and a colleague of mine wrote an article which essentially published in the Education Times of India, which we talked about stay in India, study in India. The entire context of internationalization of education, particularly for students to pursue master's degree programs, as is going to be impacted for the next few years. So if you have got admission already, I would strongly encourage you to defer. If you are thinking about going abroad, defer it further. This is also, and there are a number of reasons for it. The entire gamut of international education in universities around the world have already announced that education moving online. And people go abroad not just for getting the degree. The entire experience of understanding and being part of a society is going to be very different. So I would strongly encourage that for the next 2 years minimum, the idea of going abroad for higher studies, particularly LLM and other higher studies, should be deferred. The second thing is that this is also a very important time for you to focus on acquiring knowledge, developing skills, gathering, upgrading your qualifications, and also in some ways specializing in areas of your research and interest. I think it's a perfect time for you to go back to university. So for those of you who may not be, who may have thought of, let's say, doing an LLM in the years to come, might just take a decision actually to be enrolled in a master's program. I think this is also, in fact, recession and crises of this kind has always seen people going back to universities. And so education institutions are places where this is a good time for you to go back and specialize yourself. The third thing which I will say is that many have spoken about the different impacts of careers. I am going to say that I've always felt that one of the tragedies of Indian legal education is the fact that the best and brightest of Indian law graduates don't choose academia as their career option. And we are very fortunate that we have been able to attract some of the finest minds. And we believe that this is an opportunity for some of you to think about a future as you think about academia. The opportunity to inspire and engage and transform and deeply connect with young minds to build the future of legal education and legal profession is writ large in an academic institution. And I can only hope that some of you pursue that. And in that context, it's useful to mention that there has been a diversification of careers within academia. You could, of course, be a teacher, a researcher, but also, as Justice Madan Lokar mentioned, you could also contribute towards research in multiple settings, including working for think tanks and research institutions and other types of organizations which are engaged in research. I personally think that while some of you might feel feel dejected about the fact that what you had planned in relation to working at a corporate law firm, or maybe even corporations and companies as in-house counsel type positions, some of which will be affected. And we should not be in any illusion. We are barely beginning to see the actual impact of it. Offers which have been given will be withdrawn. People will be deferred when it comes to actually taking the jobs. People will be expected to do more than what they are taught. People will be recirculated into doing other things. All these things are real challenges that COVID is going to pose, and we should not, let's say, ignore them. But at the same time, the fundamentals of what we are facing today will require a lot of flexibility on the part of graduates and young law students to think about the future. And those fundamentals remain very strong, which is your knowledge, your perspectives, your skills, your ability to write and read and communicate effectively, your ability to pursue research and analyze and articulate impactfully. All those values that are critical for being a good lawyer remain as ever important as it is now. And that's why it's a good opportunity for you to go back to those values. It's also useful for you to recognize that the time when your ability to make a lot of money quickly might also get delayed because of this. I do believe that the existing framework of legal profession as it is structured will also go through some changes, and all of that will have impact.
This is a fact that there is no faculty to guide them. Why? Because what is needed at the master's level, the research guidance which is needed to the student is really not there. So they may get a degree just in paper, but the knowledge which is required, they may not be getting. I'm reminded of one of the remarks of Justice Lokur, which he has given when he was invited in Delhi University on one of the foundation's day celebration. It was a University Foundation Day celebration, and he has made one remark which was which really clicked us, and we have been repeating that remark within ourselves, our colleagues, and I have been sharing his comment with my students also. He expressed one concern, that is the Indian students. When they are here in India, they really do not produce any good kind of a research. But when they go abroad, wonderful research. The same students produce wonderful research. So what is it? Is it that our own education system cannot make them prepare to produce that? Is it the lack of infrastructure facilities, or it is a lack of that motivation which should come from the teachers, or it is expertise of the teachers, exposure of the teachers themselves, which is very essential to guide the students? But unfortunately, that is the fact. So then what should the students do under this scenario? Of course, as Siddharth has also mentioned in the first session, and many other the speakers have mentioned in the first session, knowledge development. You develop your knowledge, the base of the knowledge, all these. But again, the thing is that here I'm talking about that young man or the woman who's holding the LLB degree in his or her hand, and who has already spent maybe 23 years of life in the education, who's really looking forward. Yes, hard work is there. They want to do whatever new thing is coming to them, but they want certain thing that should be, which they want to earn, or at least they should be able to meet their own expenses. So that is a real problem which I see with these the students who will be stuck up and who are having the research orientation. So herein I will advise such students that they should be in contact with their teachers, their senior professors, or wherever they had gone in interning outside, maybe with the senior advocates, or maybe the judges. They can see these research opportunities. So they have to have involved whatever time is there, whatever opportunity is there in doing really the good research. This is an era where blog is very famous, where popular articles are very famous. So the CLC students can have that, but that is not sufficient. Having the blogs is not sufficient. if you are somewhere or the other looking for the academics, then you have to think of and learn the rigorous research. And this is a perfect time, I will say, that you can, learn those things by coming in contact with your seniors. You can also ask going that if persons are having the project, so you may get involved there with also. So just quickly 2-3 sentences I will also address. Why? Because we got so many questions from second year students as well as first year students who were asking us whether this online classes will continue thereafter also, what this or what that. So I think it is, the answer will be the same, whatever has been given on the virtual court hearings, etc. That yes, this is a time wherein we are compelled to have those online classes. That's another kind of a thing that these are going on very well. Because if I'm talking about myself, I was very apprehensive in embracing the online classes. So I requested one of my students to help me start. But when it got started, I found it very easy. And the students are very attentive. Class is there, 64-65 students are there in the class. It's not only I'm speaking, they are raising the questions, etc. But again, this thing should not go permanently, and it will not go. Why? Because again, it's not only listening or speaking, it is also whatever other kind of the things we learn in coming in physical contact in that particular environment which we are talking about, the academic environment.
Our example, we were over the years investing a lot in our infrastructure, IT and stuff, technology. And therefore, when this happened, fortunately or otherwise, we were well equipped to handle this. So work from home, if I first come to work from home angle, for all of us on the court side, we were really apprehensive. How will we manage court matters, attending court hearings, engaging senior counsel, attending on our own, client engagements. So we were extremely apprehensive on how we will handle those issues. But as we all know, since there was a complete lockdown and the courts were closed, but however, we were able to manage our work in spite of being from home, work from home. And once the courts came to be online courts, we were also able to manage online work. And this all thanks to the overall way the system has been able to adapt itself to this change. It has been a huge change for all of us. We haven't experienced any of it earlier ever. So from work from home to online courts and to using tech in our favor, these are the things as a law firm we have adapted to. In any case, as you may have observed over the past few years, a lot of us have moved to iPads and tablets to save our files. So there is less of physical files in court. In our courts, we have e-courts also. So the use of tech has always been there in the past few years. It is just that now it is being used much more because of the given circumstances where we are. In terms of use of tech, the next level I feel would be AI. With the advent of various companies across the world who are investing in artificial intelligence. And I do understand that that will be the new era. So that is another thing we will see. When it comes to activities of M&A, I personally feel that because of the current economic environment, there will be stressed out assets and M&A activity will be there. So it is not as if the activity will close. For our young lawyers, there will be opportunities, of course, to excel in various areas of law. My current advice to them would be to assess a field of law and from right now itself to please try to specialize in those areas, because I can share a law firm example with you that when we interview any candidate, we do want to know their areas of interest, not as well, and also the area of specialization which they intend to do. Because now going forward in the COVID era or after the COVID era, specialization is the key to doing well and excelling in that area. So to all the young lawyers and students, my advice would be alert. The world is out there for you. Keep up to date, abreast with all that's happening around us, and specialize. The other thing I think which has been also spoken about earlier was this e-course and online course which we have spoken about. So that era will be there for sure.
So I can just speak about the corporate and M&A law practice and the law firms, a non-litigation perspective of what's happening in the country and what will happen, what may happen post COVID-19. First of all, in terms of the law practice, the corporate law practice or the law firms, we have, or most of the corporate law firms, they have done their hiring for fresh law graduates for this year in previous year itself. So all those whom we have hired from various law colleges, they will be joining us this year. There may be a deferment on their date of joining, and the deferment is not because of any other reason, but because we cannot put a certainty on everything opening up in June or July. So most likely all the fresh law graduates to whom we have hired or any large law firm has hired will join the firm, if not in September, then by in October for sure. So that's what's going to happen here. In terms of the functioning or the law firm cultures, where we used to be 200 lawyers, or at least for ourselves at AZB Delhi, we used to be 200 lawyers or around 200 lawyers working in a single, under a single roof, discussing matters with each other, meeting each other, disseminating our information and knowledge with each other. That may change a bit. Why it will change is that we have tested from last over a month now as to how work from home can actually get you same seamless experience and same seamless relationship to deliver quality work back to the client. So maybe work from home may remain some part of it as law firm culture in time to come. Not in terms of everybody will be given that choice to work from home, but it will be that work from home will no more be a taboo for people who wants to be part of the law firm culture here. So let's say historically, anybody who's saying that he or she wants to work from home and cannot come to our office every day, there used to be like, a question mark, can you be part of a firm or not? But today, after seeing how things can work, yes, absolutely. I think this work from home will remain in time to come here. In terms of technology, I can speak about most of the law firms in this country after working with them across the table, is that everybody had their VCs or their video conferencing or other technology equipments in place from last over 15, 20 years. We have been doing these VCs from last 15, 20 years. It's just that the use of this Zoom call, WebEx call, or the Microsoft Team call has just increased exponentially in last 1 month. We're very happy to see that, but we have been talking to clients on Zoom calls from last over a year now, or even on WebEx or in these, WhatsApp calls here. I think it'll continue to increase. As far as corporate law work is concerned, it has actually it has actually created enough efficiencies in working with the clients here. When you can see them on a smallest possible note here, when you can talk to them like this, I think they feel far more comfort when getting advice from the lawyer. In terms of M&A activity in the country, I must speak that there are 4 key pillars of M&A activity in India. First is your strategic buyouts, when your large corporates or other corporates are buying other companies out for various purposes. Could be your backward, forward integration, could be to simply grow the business, could be for some other purpose there. Second part is when you have the financial institutions buying equity into the companies here. Now that could be your private equity investments, could be your VC funding, your angel funding, your hedge funding, or anything else. Third is very important part of it is your transactions, the normal commercial transactions, which are buying your businesses or your franchise agreements or your, like joint development agreements for real estate or anything else there. Fourth, an important part of it as part of M&A practice was a non-conventional financing of the transaction, which was largely your raising finance for equity buyouts or you're raising finance for cash out by the promoters. I can tell you that except for the first one, which is strategic buyouts by the corporates, all 3 are still continuing. All the transactions in the markets are still happening here. People are looking for opportunities, just opportunities in the market today as well to keep buying and selling more. As we know very well, the common phrase, every crisis brings opportunity. So this is the time for opportunities in the corporate law world here. The businesses are not going to die. If this COVID is not lasting more than 3 months from now, or 3 or 6 months from now, in terms of the corporate law practice or life of a corporate lawyer, not much will change.
In terms of corporate spending, see, we focus on litigation for the most part, right? And we tend to over-rotate as lawyers on litigation, but litigation is a big part, but not the only part of legal spend that clients make. A lot of the work has to do with advising clients on legal strategies, what kind of agreements to put in place, and drafting of those contracts to enable transactions, right? And if those are drafted properly with a view on risk management rather than, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, that's where our value as lawyers will lie in the future, in my view, right? More as a generalist practitioner of law. When you talk about post-COVID, a lot of force majeure kind of situations, frustration of contract kind of situations will come into play. And your ability to advise clients on how to manage in those situations will really come to the fore, right? So work on those. I think negotiation skills is an important part of what lawyers will need to do in the future, which is different from the ability to argue on a point, at length for 2 hours, right? The ability to negotiate and help your client to not just win on legal clauses in a contract, but also talk about the commercials and talk about how giving up on something and getting something more commercially valuable in return, will be more beneficial to the client rather than having a great indemnity clause or dispute resolution clause. Not that I'm saying those are not important, but those are, in my view, easier, to fix. But the real value, as someone said earlier on, is your real advisory role, not just confined to legal advice, but also general commercial and corporate advice that you can give to clients. I think that's where the value will be moving forward. Litigation will also increase. I think a lot of Disaster Management Act kind of cases, unemployment related claims, lease rental waiver related cases that we are seeing. And I think something that not many of us are picking on is the fact that governments, especially state governments, are issuing directives. Like in Karnataka, they issue directives to not fire people or not deduct salaries, etc. Now, in my view, those are ultra vires, the object of labor law codes, right? The DMA does not necessarily entitle you to issue such directives. Now, those are born out of empathy and sympathy for the labor class, for daily wage earners, but those are really ultra vires. So brushing up on those, using those principles to help your client if and when such a demand is made by a local labor inspector. There is I think a petition that has been filed in the Supreme Court, I think a couple of days back, just on this issue, right? So those kind of cases will only increase. Courts going online will obviously increase, and we are here at Cisco to help courts go online, whether that is use of WebEx, whether that is use of telepresence technologies and things like that, right? So I think overall there is more scope for you guys as fresh law graduates. You bring technology savviness to whatever you do, whether it's social interaction, and now it's going to be interaction while you practice law going forward, right? So I think overall, to me, it's a positive thing. It's just that there will be uncertainty in the short term. And that time you can use, and many have said, to brush up your skills and think about areas where you should focus on going forward, right? And focus on advisory, be a business counsel rather than a legal counsel is what I would like to end at.
Most last year students still have to give their exams, right? So, and the exams are likely to be postponed. They may not actually take place in the second week of May that usually happens, right? So if that be the case, the first hard part of the lockdown, I think all students should just concentrate on your studies, ace them, concentrate all your energies in terms of working towards that. And then perhaps by June, July, when the exams are actually over, if the lockdown doesn't extend after the 3rd of May, then by June, July, if your exams are actually done with, then the situation will perhaps be also in a better situation. Like Mr. Hardeep Sachdeva also mentioned earlier, that there have been pre-placement offers that were given by most law firms. Those are and will always be most likely not terminated, will be honored. There may be deferments, yes, mostly to accommodate lockdown periods, because physical offices will perhaps open only after the lockdown, and there will be deferments only towards that. While that be the case, I think there's one major statistic that I'd like to put out as a hope for everyone, for all young lawyers here. There's a decisive statistic that I've personally observed over years, which is that the legal industry is always a 3x of the economy. If that be the case, even with economy being in doldrums, with the 3x, it's always going to serve the legal industry in the best possible fashion, right? So there's nothing to really worry about. I think Justice Geeta Mittal mentioned that we have everything in the favor of the young who are the technologically savvy, and it's the kind of things that these people can bring about which will help the current system in only the best ways possible. Whenever we see the economy going down, we see the litigation and the dispute resolution going up. We also see that when the revenues in the legal industry go down, the government is also likely to work towards pushing and speeding up the entire momentum in terms of sorting out the regulatory issues in order to help companies deal with these situations in a better way. Those will also lead to the opportunities in terms of whether it is litigation or it is any other thing. We've seen with the orders coming out in terms of the mandatory salaries being paid by the industrial houses, there are cases now that are being filed before the courts which are saying that such mandatory paying up of salaries by companies to their respective employees are a violation of Article 14 and 19. And so there will be litigation in this area as well. The other areas which are likely to show increase now in terms of the areas that will look up will be definitely insurance, I would say. There will be renegotiation of contracts. Shipping contracts are likely to be renegotiated, and therefore all law students should probably look at these avenues. Contracts overall, it was mentioned by Mr. Hardeep Sachdeva as well that contracts both domestic and international will be renegotiated most likely. Each person has mentioned about force majeure. Employment law will be on and up. There will be areas of employment law, several areas of employment law, which will look at refunctioning, restaffing, things like that. And the nature of the industry will perhaps change in that light. But having said this, I think one thing that I always associate with CLC is that they don't necessarily always produce lawyers, and that's it's a known fact of decades of CLC. We've had senior advocates, we have judges, we have the best journalists, we have the IAS officers, you name it and we have it. So now probably is the time that we also have the CLCians look at technology and become entrepreneurs and known for that in the legal industry. Because certainly I, for one, would want to see Indian technology being used as a techno-legal product.
It is going to have a huge impact on the agriculture. It is going to have a huge impact on migration. It is going to have a huge impact on trafficking of women and children. It's going to have a huge impact on a lot of social issues. We are already getting a lot of cases of hunger from the rural areas, access to health, access to justice, access to social security, access to government schemes. We are inundated with all these things right from, and we actually in the NGO sector, we are now still working, and we are, our people are going out and doing all the work. And you know, we in our law schools, we are told that law is a social engineering tool. And this is the time when young lawyers can devote at least 1 or 2 years. And let me tell you, if you give this time for the teeming masses which Justice Geeta Mittal was talking about, and the social issues which are affecting the country right now, and the social issues which are going to affect the country due to this COVID crisis. Already the cases of domestic violence, cases of online child sexual exploitation is rising, with a lot of people coming on technology, a lot of people online. There's a huge reports of, we are seeing that online sexual exploitation. We are also getting cases of child pornography being traded in dark net and all of this. So this is a huge area of work where young lawyers can at least devote 1 or 2 years, and it will give you a lot of satisfaction. It will give you a complete understanding of the ground situation, and it will help you as an individual whenever you are either in corporate law or either in litigation. This work with the non-governmental organizations will give you a lot of opportunity, lot of personality development, lot of basic understanding of the issues, and of course there are a lot of NGOs who require good lawyers, the good legal research. In fact, the work which I do, I'm getting a lot of call for, especially from the law enforcement, for training them on online sexual exploitation issues, on how to use technology to combat the crimes which are happening on the dark net. So there are a lot of training opportunities, there are a lot of legal aid opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities to work for the poor, to ensure access of justice and access to a lot of governmental schemes which is now being done but are not reaching the poor actually. So this is the time when you can devote, and this 2 years, 1 year can help you to grow as an individual and also help you in your career wherever you are. You will be able to do a lot of work. So I would certainly, we do have a lot of lawyers working for us, and we do take a lot of legal interns, law interns for our work. But I think that this crisis is going to provide an opportunity for young lawyers to devote the time, especially for people who are still awaiting their results. This is the time when you can join some NGO and provide that work and legal research and legal support. It's going to be a great learning experience for you all before you venture out into any other profession. And also, and especially in litigation also, there are a lot of poor who require good lawyers to support them. Victims of sexual crimes, victims of the poor, they require a lot of legal support which they are missing. So this is the time and this is the place where you can contribute, and it will really be helpful to you. So my take is that there's nothing to worry about. The NGO community, the NGO sector, the non-profit sector has a lot of opportunities for lawyers.
Right, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.